be nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee.
But dear brothers and sisters, yesterday we saw that there is a lot of suffering in the world. Suffering is a part of our life. God did not create any kind of suffering, but the moment sin entered the world, man disobeyed God, suffering entered the world. Suffering came into the world. Now we have been surrounded by suffering. There is a lot of pain and suffering throughout the world. Christ makes use of these sufferings for many things. Number one, that Christ can make use of the suffering to draw us closer to Him, to draw us closer to God. There have been lots of examples when because of suffering or through suffering, people have come closer to God. See, Twin Towers, when the Twin Towers collapsed, millions of people, they thronged to the churches to pray and to make confessions and to do the reparation for the sins. Millions of people. So suffering brought them to God. During the pandemic, many families came together and prayed. A lot of them, a lot of people, they were praying in the families. So that pandemic brought families together to pray. There was one girl who met with an accident. She told me, Father, it's good that I met with an accident. I was not leading a moral life, morally sound life. When I met with an accident and I was recuperating in a hospital, I was just thinking, within seconds, I would have gone from this world. Within seconds, I would have been dead. It's God who saved me. He saved me, that means He has got some purpose. And therefore, I changed myself. I got totally transformed. I started going to church. I started going for mass and for confessions and all. Now I'm a totally changed person. It seems that Saint Anthony, he wanted to go to Africa to preach, and he was on his way. He was sailing, and as he was sailing, he developed fever. And on the port of Africa, when he was about to alight, he could not, and he had to return. On his way back, he heard a tender voice come to me, and then he realized that he had to go to Jesus and be with Him, go and sit before the Blessed Sacrament. He started going and sitting before the Blessed Sacrament for hours and hours and hours. So that fever of him, that suffering of him, it brought him closer to God, and he never gave up after that, prostrating before the Blessed Sacrament. My dear brothers and sisters, there's a famous charismatic writer named Linda Schubert. This lady now, she is one of the best speakers in the world. Now she said, when I got married, my husband died. I got married second time, my second husband died. I married for the third time, the third husband died. And I said, what's wrong? What's going on? And then my brother died in plane crash. And then God told me, come to me. And when I realized that, I had to change my ways. I had to go closer to God. I gave up everything. I got myself totally transformed to His ways. And now I go around the whole world, give witnesses of His love. My dear brothers and sisters, suffering can bring you closer to God. That's point number one. Point number two, that suffering can be to prune us. In John 15 we read, God telling us, I am the vine, you are the branches. Every branch that yields fruit will be pruned that it may yield more fruit. Here in Vasai we have many florists and many farmers who grow different kinds of flowers, especially mogra flower. So they grow. But before that, before the month of March, before the season, they prune all the plants so that all the plants once again they start flourishing, and they yield good crop or good flowers, beautiful flowers. So pruning is done in order that they may yield more flowers and more fruit. Similarly, many people ask, I'm doing good, I don't do anything wrong, I don't do no wrong to anybody, then why is it there's so much of suffering in my life? Why there's so much of pain? Why my husband has to fall sick? Why my wife has to be ill? Why my children have to be ill? Etc. etc. And I tell them that God sends suffering, or God allows suffering even to the people who are doing well, so that they may do better and better. So suffering God can make use of suffering to prune yourself so that you may yield more fruit. And thirdly, suffering can strengthen you in faith. Abraham was promised by God, from you I will create nations, and I will create nations, and I'll bless you abundantly. And yet he had no child till he was advanced in age. And God tells him that Sarah will bear a son, and he believed in him. Then when he was 12 years old, God asked him, go and give your son to me and sacrifice him. And Abraham was ready to sacrifice him. Abraham was ready to sacrifice him, his only son. And then God tested his faith, and then now today he is the father of faith, known as the father of faith. That's because he endured all kinds of suffering, accepted suffering, and faced it courageously, fearlessly, trusting in God. The best example is the example of Job. Job, Satan was told by God that I allow you to test him. He will not fail. He will not fail me. You guys try him for anything. And then Job was stripped of all his possessions, his wives, his children, his cattle, his fields, everything was destroyed. And his wife said, forget your God and go and die. And then he says, God came and God took it away. And then Job did not fail God. God did not fail him. And Job received everything in abundance. He received everything 7 times more. 7 times more, his wives and his children, his cattle and his crop and everything. So my dear brothers and sisters, suffering can be used by God to draw us closer to Him. Suffering can be used to prune us so that He may yield more fruit. And suffering can strengthen us in faith. So let's pray during this Lent that as we meditate upon suffering, it may draw us closer to God, it may prune us, it may strengthen us in faith. God bless you one and all.